Hello to all the young people of Debec and Canterbury United Church. It's very wonderful that you took this time to come by and see me. It's been a while since we've gotten together, and sadly, it might be a little while yet before we get to see each other. And that makes me a little bit sad because I really, really and truly love coming down to visit everyone, to sing some songs and spend some time with you all. I thought since we can't get together, it might be nice to do our children's time through a video on YouTube. That way, even though we can't get together in person, at least we can spend a little bit of time together and maybe share a story or two. I have a very special story for us this morning. This is a book that was actually one of my daughters. This was Eve's book when she was little, and it's called The Legend of St. Christopher. Of course, Christopher is my first name, so this book is very special to me personally. It's a fun story, and it's important that I mention it's called The Legend of St. Christopher. You see, this was a story made up a very long time ago, about 600 years ago, and it was made up by a young person. And one of the wonderful things about young people is that they have such great imaginations. And it was a young person who was thinking about the story of Jesus, and when thinking through some of the different parts of that story, they came up with this wonderful story called The Legend of St. Christopher. And a fun thing about making up stories, it gives you a chance to talk about your feelings and your thoughts. And some of the best stories that we have are from people thinking about the story of Jesus and thinking through their own ideas. I'll give you a simple example. Does anyone know the Lord of the Rings trilogy? It was a story written by a very gifted writer and thinker. His last name was Tolkien, and Tolkien lived in England and suffered terribly as a young person, suffered through World War I, which was a very scary and dangerous time. And as he was thinking through his own struggles in life, he was thinking through his own struggles in light of the gospel and the story of Jesus. And he came up with some very interesting, beautiful, exciting, and very meaningful stories. And one of the big themes in the Lord of the Rings trilogy has to do with the hobbits. And if you don't know the story of the Lord of the Rings, I'll tell you really simply, the hobbits were very small people. They were very small, literally very small. They were much smaller than humans. And they lived in this world where there were dragons, great warriors, very wise wizards, all sorts of powerful, scary things. So many things that were much, much bigger than they were. And Tolkien thought, well, what is it like for a very small person in a very big, scary world? And what sort of role might they have in the story? Now, I mention that because that's kind of similar to the idea this young person came up with the legend of St. Christopher. So, let's read this story together. In days of old, there lived a man called Ofuro. His name meant the bearer. He was very tall and strong, and his face was fierce and bold. That is a fierce-looking face, isn't it? He served the king of the land where he lived, but he wanted to find an even greater king. He wanted to find the greatest king in the world, to serve him as his bearer. So Ofuro went out and searched until he found a king whom some said was the greatest in the world. And Ofuro served in his court. One day, a minstrel came to the court and sang a song about the devil. Trembling, the king made the sign of a cross as he listened to the song. Ofuro was amazed and wondered what the sign meant. At first the king would not tell him, but Ofuro said, "Tell me what the sign means, or I shall leave your court." So the king told him, "When I hear the devil's name and make the sign of the cross, the devil cannot harm me." Ofuro said, "You fear the devil? That means the devil is mightier than you. I thought I had found the mightiest and the greatest lord in all the world, but I was wrong. Farewell, I will go find the devil and be his servant." So Ofuro left the king and went to find the devil. As he went through a great desert, he saw a knight with a cruel face half hidden by his armor. "Where are you going?" asked the knight. "I'm looking for the devil," said Ofuro. "I want him for my master because he is stronger than the greatest king in the world." "I am the one you seek," said the knight. "I am the devil." Then Ofuro swore to be the devil's servant and took him for his master. Isn't that a frightful looking knight? As they went along together, they saw a cross standing by the side of the road. When the devil saw the cross, he was afraid and fled. Ofuro was amazed. He ran after the devil and asked him why he had run away. But the devil would not tell him. Ofuro said, "If you will not tell me, I will leave you and serve you no more." So the devil was forced to answer, since he wanted Ofuro to serve him. "There was a man called Christ who died on a cross, and when I see his sign, I am afraid. Since you flee from his sign, he must be greater and mightier than you," said Ofuro. "I have made a mistake. I have not found the greatest lord of the world. I will serve you no longer. I will go to look for Christ." Ofuro searched for a long time to find Christ. At last he came to a lonely place where a hermit lived. Ofuro asked the hermit where he could find Christ. The hermit answered, "If you would find him, go live by yonder river. The river is deep and wide, and many people have drowned when they tried to cross. You are tall and strong. If you live by the river, you can carry people over. Our Lord Jesus Christ will be pleased to see you helping travelers, and I hope he will show himself to you." Ofuro replied, "I can do this service, and I promise that I will." He went to the river's edge and built himself a hut. When anyone came to cross the river, Ofuro took a great staff in his hand to guide his steps. Then he carried the person on his shoulders through the deep water to the other side. For many days, Ofuro lived at the water's edge. Winter came and snow lay deep on the ground. One cold and windy night, as Ofuro slept in his hut, he heard the voice of a child calling him. "Ofuro, Ofuro, come out and carry me over the river." Ofuro rose and went out, but he saw no one. He went into his hut again. Then once more he heard the voice crying, "Ofuro, Ofuro, come out and bear me over." But he ran out and found nobody. A third time he was called. When he ran out, he saw a child standing by the bank of the river. "Will you carry me safely over the water?" asked the child. "I will carry you," Ofuro answered. Then he lifted the child onto his shoulders. He took his staff in his hand and stepped down into the river. The water was icy cold. It rose higher and higher around him. The child was as heavy as lead on his shoulders. And as Ofuro went further, The water swirled wildly about them. The child grew heavier and heavier, and Ofero feared they would drown. At last he struggled out of the deep water and felt the ground firm beneath his feet. When he came to the far side of the river, he set the child down and said, "Child, you have put me in great danger. You were so heavy that I felt as if I had all the world on my shoulders. I did not know that I could carry such a load." And the child answered, "When you carried me on your shoulders, you carried the world. For I have the whole world in my hands. I am Jesus Christ, the King whom you serve. And you will no longer be called Ofero, but Christopher, the Christ bearer. When you are gone, others will come, remembering you and helping travelers on their way, so that you will know I say the truth. Set your staff in the earth by your door. Tomorrow it will bear flowers and fruit." As the child spoke, he vanished. Christopher turned and made his way back across the river. That night he set his staff in the earth by the door of his little hut. And when he rose in the morning, he found that his staff had taken root in the earth. It was covered with leaves and fruit and bright flowers blooming in the snow. And for the rest of his life, the face of Christopher was joyful and youthful like that of a child. And in memory of him, travelers to this day carry pictures of him to help them on their journeys. Well, that is a lovely story. If you have any questions, anything at all, feel free to get your mom, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa, anyone at all who takes care of you, to send us an email. We'll be happy to respond. We'll send you a message or a video. Take care now. Bye-bye.